Good evening, all. Hopefully you can hear me all right. I'll wait for the mic check to come through, but everything's telling me on my side that I haven't muted myself, which is, you know, small victories, right? Good evening. Hope you're doing well. Good evening to Socially, to Truther, Sloth, to Space Saga, to Karagod, Ray, to AV, and everyone else in chat. Fantastic. This is good news. I'm pleased, and I'll continue to monitor the levels because I've been doing some funny things this end. Jackal, good evening, good to see you. Yeah, lots to talk about this week. Not just around the medical and the Apollo Medivac and the Triage, which I'm hoping I've gotten away with and we can have a look at in a little while. Not just that, but obviously Pirate Week has arrived. We've got the big, and I've just realised I left my notebook over there, so I'll go get it in a sec. But we've got the almost 3-hour Star Citizen Live to go over very, very quickly. I made some notes, so we don't need to sit and watch the entire thing. But we are going to watch one particular segment because I think it's important. And then we're going to look at a little bit of the community's reaction, which predictably has been to act like entitled children. But, you know, we'll come on to that in just a second. So yes, we're going to have a look in a little while. Let's get cracking with it. Let's take a look at Pirate Week. Just while we kind of populate and people get in, I don't want to kind of skip over and then end up answering the same question twice around medical gameplay and the Apollo and all that sort of stuff. So, oh no, you got excited and instead of applying the CCU, you refunded it. Was it a big saving you lost? You don't have to answer that if you don't want to, but I hope it wasn't. I'm just going to knock the volume down on that slightly because that's loud. Right, so let's have a look then at some of what is going on with Pirate Week. I keep forgetting to do the sound effect, right? Okay, so Pirate Week is here. Once again, there's a little bit of an in-game event, which we'll look at in just a second. But mainly, obviously, this is a vehicle for sales. It was a $10 CCU. Okay. So not the worst thing in the world. And regarding the save-in, we'll come on to that. So, Pirate Week is here. There's the normal competition stuff. There's the paints that run with everything, and they brought back some of the old paints as well. And there's this here, which is the in-game kind of treasure hunt, if you will. So, you head to Cutter's Rig. You go to the Spire, reaching for the clouds. I hate the thing. So, you're then going to look there, and then it takes you to the next point and next point. And as it says down here, I think there are more. Yeah, 4 clues are already waiting with more yet to unfurl. You find the code, and you get an item. So there's that. Yeah. Hello, Rusty. Good to see you, my friend. So that's that, and then you pop your code in here to get the item. As to what that is, not sure. I haven't started this yet. Been a little bit busy this week. There's the normal Arena Commander. You defeat the Arena Commander, the Pirate Swarm, and then you get the option to buy either the Pirate Aegis Gladius or the Pirate Drake Caterpillar. So they are, as far as I'm aware, they're identical to the normal ones. You just get a unique skin for them that's only earnable, as far as I'm aware, through this. You've got the normal competition of screenshots with your guys and girls, creating basically a symbol, some sort of flag for your people, and then that's the competition there. I'll have a look at that in a second. There's not a lot of people that muck around that. Hello, Red Samurai. Good to see you, my friend. Welcome in. Good evening. And then we are into the paints, and there's a wall of them. You've got the Punisher-esque paints, which are kind of pictured here. We'll have a look at those in a second. And then the normal packs of big stuff being open, And a lot of these will carry, as it says, either bonus paints, bonus items, or both. So, yeah. again, lots and lots of stuff, just basically selling more as per normal. The Skull Crusher paint is the event paint this time around. We've got the whole collection for an eye-watering £88 and whatever that is in dollars. You also then have the individual paints laid out, and it's this large kind of Punisher skull motif. It's kind of interesting because on some of them, the teeth is pointing towards the back of the ship or the vehicle, and then on some of them it's pointing towards the front. And I guess on the Avenger it kind of makes sense because of the shape of those where's that word? Intakes. There we go, that's the word that I was after. But there's this. Hey Stimpack, good to see you. So yeah, there you go. Across the board, some quite nice looking ones. I do like the one for the Vulture. I'm tempted, but I haven't pulled the trigger yet. So there you are, paint. Huzzah. And then they've pulled back some of the old pirate paints, and also some paints that I guess could loosely be called pirate because they're dark. I don't know. But yes, so some of the old, or some of the darker paints to throw in there as well. And then there's the Pirate Reek Treasure Pack. And this one's a little bit interesting, right? So this has in it some SCU containers with a skull on them, and then you've got 2 suits of armor and 2 weapons. So the 2, I think they're medium suits of armor, the Arden and the Artemex, both themed, and you get one of the AO3 sniper rifles and one of the P6LR sniper rifles. Good weapons. But again, it's a lot just for a couple of containers. I mean, I suppose this is the sort of thing you want to keep in your hangar as flair, because of course, as with all of these things, when you lose them, you lose them. One light, one medium. That's right. So yeah, so that's the set there. That's it. Again, nice. I like the SCU skull containers. I think I'll steal them off someone else rather than getting them myself, because it's just a little bit of money. Bunch of ships have come out on sale as well, and just scooting through. We'll get to the war bonds in a second. I'll just flick through so everyone can see. If you haven't had a chance to have a look for yourself, or you were waiting for me to do it for you, don't know why you would, but there you go. Game mode exclusive, that Pirate Gladius, that's part of the Arena Commander one, I believe. So yeah, there you go. A fair amount on sale this time round. Your 2 war bonds are the Anvil Asgard and the Crusader M2 Hercules, and what you're looking at for these, the Asgard, $325 war bond, so $25 off. The M2, I think it's the same again, $25 off. No, it's $35 off, so a little bit more. Ta-da! So that's where we are in terms of Pirate Week. Like we said, a little bit of in-game stuff, not a massive amount, and this pirate kind of treasure hunt thing's been going for a little while now. So it would be nice to see them start to put a little bit more in around this sort of stuff, although I know there'll be people that are arguing that every day is a piracy day in Star Citizen, so we don't need to bother with that. Don't know. Really, really don't know. I'm just going to very quickly, I've just realised that because I was working on a video a little while ago, that what I'd actually done is I'd not done what I needed to do, which is replace it with a proper background. So that was fun. Oops. Okay, cool. So there's that. Blaze, welcome in. Good to see you. John Chavez, hello. I really want that helmet from CitizenCon Goodies, but $35, while not knowing if the rest is something I'd even not hate to have on my account, turns you off. Funny enough, I don't think you're alone in that at all, John. I think that is a very common kind of complaint with the whole pack at the moment. And maybe we'll have a look at that in a little while, the CitizenCon stuff. Because, interestingly, we are less than a month now from CitizenCon, which is interesting stuff, right? Okay, so, other things that we've had happen this week. We have had the roadmap roundup. Not huge amounts in here that are changing, that are going to set fire to the world. We've got the medical gameplay improvements, obviously committed, obviously in the PTU right now, which I believe is also open to all backers, so you can go and have a look. Triage and the Medivac are in, and we're going to have a look at the Medivac as long as my account holds up. I've got it loaded to my account. The Onyx facilities, the next stage of that is all ready to go. There are now NPC dropships which are going to appear in Pyro. So when you attack kind of outposts and stuff, there may be a dropship that comes in to try and defend people when the local population is attacked. So that's kind of interesting. There's a heavy utility armor that's been committed to 4.3.1, as well as the Volt LMG. And I know you're not seeing this, I'll just read it out. It's just a lot of text and it's pretty boring. But for this bit it says, introducing Volt's Heavy Hitter, a machine gun that ramps up the punishment as it heats up, trading rate of fire for raw stopping power. So getting slower, but hitting harder. As it nears peak overheat, it unleashes searing energy blasts capable of tearing through hostile forces with terrifying efficiency, featuring a hefty reload time but with a high cap magazine. So this will be the latest overpowered hotness that we'll have for 4.3.1, and then it will be toned down once 4.4 is out, or 4.3.2, whatever way they go with that. The laser cannon art refactors for Bearing have come out, and unfortunately, once again, mission pickup on location has been punted to later. So that's not happening for a little while. That has been postponed, quote unquote, to a future release. So it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. These things are notoriously unreliable. So CitizenCon Direct, we're going to have a look at that goodies pack that Chavez mentioned, and see what's contained within. The big thing here, I think, the big bit of information, because this keeps catching people out when I say this, CitizenCon Direct is going to be a 2-hour affair. It's 2 hours. That's it. That's all we're getting. And they've just confirmed in Star Citizen Live on Thursday this week that there will not be anything about Squadron 42 in it. So they're keeping, quote-unquote, that team focused. So, yeah, that's where we are. Let's have a look then at... I'll just close that little window first. There we go. Ta-da. Let's zoom in a bit. Let's have a look then at the CitizenCon Digital Goodies Pack. Okay, so there's a lot in this yet that hasn't yet to be revealed. Okay, we've got this suit of armor, which we can see, which is what's already been mentioned about the hat, or the helmet, and how good that looks. As we said here, we get two new armor sets. We've got this stuff in the background. There's a couple of armor sets over here, it looks like. This one kind of looks interesting, because you've got like 2 lights on either side. That's kind of cool. So that's sitting in the background. We've got some sort of clothing over here, but as it says, new armor set 1 and 2, new undersuit, new flight suit with helmet, which very much looks like that's what this is up here. There's a new jacket, FPS weapons 1, 2, and 3. There's a challenge coin, trophy, and 3 items of decor. So not huge amounts of details, and a lot of this will be, you know, as they said, unveiled at CitizenCon Direct. With all items being delivered in upcoming patches. Yeah, so the interesting thing here, and I don't know how much closer I can get to this image, not much by the looks of things, there is, I believe, a number somewhere on this flight suit which seems to match some of the artwork on the Paladin. Is it 051, something like that? So people are wondering whether the two things are linked, as Soshi's put down there as well, and Saga. So yeah, that's very cool, and yes, matching the two would be pretty neat, I think. So yeah, SA, good evening, my friend. Essential Asa, hello. Stunner, Blaze88, good to see everyone. Thanks for coming in. It's good to see you all. We've had a quick look at the Pirate Week stuff. We're now having a look at the CitizenCon Direct stuff. I think that the big issue here for me is £31. and whatever that equates to in dollars. Again, it's a lot for in-game items. The completionist in me wants the challenge coin and the trophy. The side of me that's saving for a house is telling me not to. Let's see which wins out in the end, eh? So yeah, it's on the helmet, is it? Yeah, very possibly. Yeah, there you go. So it's up at that top corner of the helmet. So yeah, that is clearly the uniform of a crash test dummy employee. I think it's wearing far too much breakable stuff for being a Drake crash test pilot. Yes, so there. Okay, so I'm going to go and kill this volume because we're going to have a look now at something that Jared had said in Star Citizen Live. So now this is the end. This is towards the end of the Star Citizen Live video, and what's really interesting here is this video is just under 3 hours long, so it's 50% longer than CitizenCon Direct will be. This was a long video between Benoit Beausejour and Jared, and it was basically the follow-up to the one at the end of March that kicked off the year focusing on stability and playability. So they've kind of followed up with where they are and what they want to talk about. And, you know, this is the interesting bit because it pertains to Squadron 42. And what Jared had talked about here was the email, the Squadron 42 email that came out to those people who are subscribed to it. And it had some interesting information about Squadron 42 in it. And he had this to say.
There will be no Squadron 42 presence at CitizenCon Direct this year. So just in case there was any kind of people were like, I didn't quite understand the message, or maybe the message wasn't, fully clear and whatnot. And if it wasn't, maybe that was on us. That team is heads down. We drew a line in the sand when we said 2026.
Soft sound, is it? Oh, okay. To be fair, all he said there, I'll pump the volume back up. Good, well spotted, thank you, socially. But basically, what he said there was, well, we'll go back and have a look again, shall we?
Reviews and reshoots and all that kind of stuff. So don't equate length with quality. Never said those words before. That was for him. He's laughing over there. You can't see him. System. There was a note at the end there about the Squadron 42 team still being heads down and working on that. I want to second the information there, and I want to star explain. I'm going to star explain the information that was there. There will be no Squadron 42 presence at CitizenCon Direct this year. So just in case there was any kind of people were like, I didn't quite understand the message, or maybe the message wasn't, fully clear and whatnot. And if it wasn't, maybe that was on us. That team is heads down. We drew a line in the sand when we said.
So that's the first part. And it just backs up what I said, right? And this is obviously where I got it from. Here's the important bit that everyone needs to know.
2026. I don't know if we're going to make it. I just know that we're going to do every single thing possible to make it. And part of that is not taking time for the distraction of CitizenCon. That's why we're not doing a larger event this year. It's why we're doing a smaller, more focused thing. Even when we did digital CitizenCon, those were still these big 6, 8, 10-hour things. We called that CitizenCon. This is not CitizenCon. It's CitizenCon Direct. It's a much smaller, more focused thing, specifically on the work of the Star Citizen team and what they plan for the next year of development.
So, a couple of bits that I want to kind of focus on there. The first one is that this is what they're focusing on for the next year. So this won't necessarily be the big handfuls into the far future stuff that we saw with stations and base building and all that sort of stuff, right? Because it's what they're going to introduce in the next year. Now, that might mean that stations, or more likely base building, might to be a part of that, but we'll see. Whatever they're going to show us, they're expecting to have done in the next year. We all know to take that with a metric, ton of salt, because you always have to when CIG start talking about anything to do with release dates. But that's the key thing. The bit that I want to pick up on there is that he said they are not sure if they are going to hit their Squadron 42 release date. And I think there's a very key reason for this. They have stated online through there's a publication, basically a French-Canadian publication that talked about this. And Chris Roberts has gone on record as saying that they want to try and avoid clashing with Grand Theft Auto 6. We'd speculated that was the case. I think it was common sense that was going to be the case. But that's what they'd said, is they wanted to avoid that from there being a clash. Even though they're on separate platforms, Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to be huge when it comes out, even if it's huge and then flops, which, let's face it, no one is expecting. So, there's that element of it. That was going to be in May, I think it was, of 2026. Then they announced they were going to push it back until August. So, in order to clash, they've either got to go for a Christmas release in 2026, or they've got to get it out within the first 6 months. And probably a little bit sooner than that, which makes it more problematic, right? You either squeeze it in at the end of the year, around Christmas and everything else that goes on at that time of the year, or their deadline has just dropped back massive, has come forward massively. But, it's going to be interesting for them, I think, to try and get that out in that window, which is why they've said that.
We're not going to look at...
This is not me making an excuse for them, and this is not me saying that I think they should delay Squadron 42. It needs to come out next year. That's been my position ever since they announced that it was going to be 2026. It needs to come out that year. However, as I am sure you can imagine, there has been some very, very interesting reactions within the community. And we're going to have a look at those in a second, because this is problematic. So yeah, let's have a look at that now. Okay, I'm going to grab myself here, and I'm going to move myself. Am I? No, I'm not. It's fine. We'll stay here. So this basically says, CIG, you put the Star Citizen abandonware on life support for years to make Squadron 42. Don't you dare not release it in 2026. Okay. Again, this is straight away. It's the world's coming to an end. It's the heat death of the universe. Whatever. It's not abandonware. Clearly, they've been adding to it. We've had more content this year than I think we've had at any other point. But okay, if you don't release Squadron 42 in 2026, then we have a right to ask you to exchange them. I mean, you always have that right. They just also have a right to ignore you, right? Put Squadron 42 on the back burner and assign most people to Star Citizen. To the project, people pay you this generous amount of money every year for ships to fly in. As we pay you for items we can only use and we only want to use in Star Citizen, not in Squadron 42. Finally, do what's right, Mr. Chris Roberts. No one will be playing Squadron 42 for more than a few days, maybe weeks. But Star Citizen was supposed to be the game of our lifetime. Get your priorities right, thank you. Yeah. There are 22 facepalm reacts to this. There are 17 clown reacts to this against 20 100% ones and 8 pointing at it. Right? Sky is falling again, says Stunner, and Stunner's absolutely on the money again. That's what this is, right? This is why you try and stay off Spectrum if you can, because Spectrum is basically brain rot in forum form. It's not good. So, the idea that people don't want to play Squadron 42, not true. It's more than a few days. There's 35 to 40 hours of content there. Some people might be able to do that in a few days. Some of us have jobs, just saying. So it's not going to be that. And yes, of course, a single player is going to have a shorter lifespan than an MMO. I don't know why we think this is being clever or that we're stating something that everyone, including Chris and the team at CIG, don't understand. Thinking that they don't understand this. Of course they understand it. It's not hard, right? But they get this out. The key thing for Squadron 42 is that it does two things. It's basically a gateway drug into Star Citizen. It's also a serious source of funding if the game is well received, right? It's two very critical things for Star Citizen. Not that Star Citizen's struggling on the funding front right now, but lots is better than none at all. So yeah, so that's where we are. And of course, if I scroll any further down in this chat, excuse me, all we are going to see is people whinging, complaining, making that sort of stuff. Now, this is obviously not a call to action for people to go onto Spectrum and wade in and start screaming at people. Please don't do that. The problem with things like Spectrum is the idiots on there who are going to doomsay about everything will drag you down to their level and then they'll beat you on experience. So don't. Just leave them be. You know, it's going to be fine. Hey, Macho, good to see you, my friend. So yes, it's the normal stuff. You know, of people whinging, and they're not going to get what they want, so they're very, very upset. They're very, very angry, and it is what it is, right? It's unfortunate, but that's what people are like. What I will say here is beware the cautionary tale of Cyberpunk. So Cyberpunk was delayed once and people whinged. Cyberpunk was delayed twice and CD Projekt Red was sent death threats. That's how bad that got, right? Because my game isn't coming as soon as I would like, so I'm going to threaten to hurt people. That's what happened. And then what did happen was it was released in a state where it wasn't ready. And it killed the game. Now, I play the game. I played the game after Phantom Liberty came out and they fixed everything. It's an incredible game. It's probably my favourite game of all time. However, it's not getting any more DLC. It's got a couple of little patches and stuff like that, but they're not adding anything more to it, despite the fact you can play the game and you can see where they were going to add stuff. You can see that there are locations that you don't engage with in the game that are far too nice not to be included in future DLC. I would much rather Squadron 42 release later, but ready, than not ready. And I know that we talk about this all the time because it's like, well, hang on a second, how long is too long? It isn't, as far as I'm concerned. Well, that's not strictly true. Too long is when the project starts to die off and they still drag their heels, rather than, drawing stumps, being realistic and getting a workable product out at that time. That's when it's too long. But I think people underestimate the importance of Squadron 42 and the knock-on effect it's going to have with Star Citizen. Cloud Imperium Games has yet to deliver a finished product at all, which is crazy for a company that has made almost, over 850 million. If the first product is hot garbage, it's not going to reflect very well at all. So, at the risk of sounding like I've just come off TikTok, let them cook, let them do what they've got to do. And also, stay off Spectrum. It gives you the dumb. So, yeah. There. Can says, the biggest issue for me is the longer they drag out Squadron 42, the longer it takes us to get SC, but they need Squadron 42 to succeed to fund SC. I mean, there's certainly a point at which that extra money, what I'm hoping is that extra money that goes in from Squadron 42 then stops, or then becomes, it doesn't go further, they don't rapid expand and forget the fact that they don't have another Squadron episode right round the corner. So I'm hoping that money becomes a pot of, this is for a rainy day, this is the buffer against expansion. Because the one thing that we absolutely have seen is that they are very good to spending very close to their income. And obviously if income starts to tail off, they're going to have to downsize, which means either longer delivery times, or reduce scope of the project in order to get to 1.0, get it out, and hopefully rescue it itself at that point. So yeah, Macaboos, good evening, buddy. Good to see you. They never should have said anything about 2026, in my opinion. I just don't know. I'm really hoping that that's what they were aiming for. At which point, absolutely talking about 2026. If they were at that point certain that they could hit it, I mean, the one thing I would take away from this is that it very much seems like Grand Theft Auto has a bigger part to play in this than maybe they're willing to admit publicly. Sorry, guys, I've got mucky glasses and there's something in my eye at the same time. So it's all going wrong. It's all going horribly, horribly wrong. What I'm going to do just while we talk is I'm going to try and boot up the PTU, which might mean that I go slightly slideshowy, but don't worry, I will switch across to, if that does happen, I will switch across to the game and get rid of the camera so it looks a lot more normal. But we're just going to have a look around the Apollo Medivac. For those that haven't seen it, and I'm sure there aren't that many of you in here yet, that haven't yet seen it, sorry, because there's videos out. It's been in the PTU since Friday night, so it's been around for a while. There are videos out on it. I know JoJo TV's got a video out. It's doing very, very well. So if you want to have seen it, you could have done, but I just wanted to show some observations and that sort of stuff. Go get the sausage, says Stunner. No, mate, I'm gonna drink my Diet Coke because I'm on one this evening. Full disclaimer, not feeling particularly well today, so I might well need to cut things ever so slightly short. We'll see. But I'm a bit bunged up. I don't know if you can hear it. I will mute myself from time to time when I have to snark and all that sort of stuff, but we'll go from there. So we'll look at this, we'll talk about medical gameplay, and then towards the end I want to talk about the key headlines that came out of that Star Citizen Live on Thursday with all the tech and development stuff, because there was some interesting bits in that and it's probably worth having a look. So once I've loaded this up, so Shadow Girl was very kind in dropping off her medevac in my hangar. Now, if things have worked, that medevac should still be in my hangar. Oh, okay. So it looks like we are full on the EU servers. EU clearly really enjoying the PTU. This is going to boot up. I'm going to go ever so slightly slideshowy. You're going to have a little bit of stuttering. Just bear with me, because there's no point in going into the game and then not having it work when, you know, we need to, you know, or this ship not being there, and then there's no point in us having a look, as it were. So yeah. I do like the fact that on the intro screen, I suppose we can change over now. Why not? We'll do it. I do like the fact that on the intro screen it says most pirated ships list. The Advocacy have released their yearly report on the most frequently stolen vehicles. Is your craft in the top 10 for 29.55? I don't know. So Khan says Rockstar can launch GTA 6 whenever they want. Everyone else is desperately rescheduling around GTA 6 as they know Twitch streamers, games media will all focus on GTA regardless. There was a really interesting one. Is it what's the game that's just come out? The platformer that crashed Steam. Is it Hollow Knight something? Shadow Silk, something like that? When that came out, that was a very interesting thing because there's other games that have skipped even for that. I've not got the medevac. Boo! Well, that's rubbish. And of course it's not going to be in here, is it? No. Well, that's a shame. We had it saved in here, ready to go, and it's not. But that's okay. We can go and have a look. Luna Maria, thank you very much. Very kind. You're an absolute star. Thank you. Good to see you, and hope you're doing well. Okay, so let's transition back across. Oh, just wait for that to calm down. Oh dear, it's crashed. There we go. Okay, so that's that. Silk Song, yes, I downloaded it. Very cool. I hope you're enjoying it. It looks like it's a lot of fun. But yes, unfortunately, so here's the thing. I have the medevac at the moment. I've got a medevac. The Apollo Medivac. I've got one of those. I don't have the triage. However, it's at the end of a CCU chain that I haven't yet applied, because the CCU chain application fear is real. Once I'm that, I can't step back. And part of that chain, at the $200 mark, is the Vulcan, and I want to give the Vulcan a go as well. And what's interesting is, as much as I like the idea of the medevac, it has not been compelling enough right now for me to apply the chain. So let me talk a little bit about why. And whilst I'm doing that, I guess what I will do is I'll see if I can find it's Jojo TV's video, because the dude is doing so well at the minute on YouTube, about it. And I will cut the sound, but we can watch that in the background so you can at least see what I'm talking about. Go, let's have a look. Here we go. No one in here have a medevac. I'm sure they will as well. There's no need. I mean, you know what it's like in Star Citizen, right? How long it takes to.
As a beauty influencer.
Thanks very much for the ads, YouTube. As a beauty influencer, which clearly I'm not. But we'll go and have a look, and I'll have a talk about this, so you can watch Jojo TV's video whilst we are. Whilst we're talking about medical gameplay and the Apollo itself. So just give me a second, and we'll have a look. Dell has one medevac, if not three. You're not wrong. Okay, so it's Jojo TV. That's his YouTube channel name. This is his video. I'm not claiming anything of this footage. And go check him out. He's great for news and all that sort of stuff. The guy is absolutely flying on YouTube as it goes. So as we talk about this, so I really like the medevac. Obviously, with the 2 bays, you've got the option for 1 tier 1, 2 tier 2s, and or 3 tier 3s, and that's replicated left and right. They're just mirror images of each other, which in and of itself makes it a very capable medical platform. The thing that stood out about the medevac for me was the drones. And for those that don't know, the medevac was supposed to be equipped with drones, and the idea was that the medevac would go in the immediate aftermath of a fleet battle, and the drones would assist it in picking up pilots who had ejected mid-combat and were now just floating around in, the remains of the battlefield, right? So that you would go through, and the Apollo would recover them. The drones would get them, bring them back to the ship, so that the ship was able to obviously do whatever it was doing and avoid the tail end of the engagement whilst recovering these pilots. That, to me, 100% just sold the medevac to me as a concept. That is now not happening for the foreseeable future. And CIG have basically said, because of the way they're foreseeing drone gameplay, they do not at the moment believe there will be medical drones. However, they have left the space in the hull, so if medical drones come back, the medevac will have it returned to them. Okay, and this for me, I feel like that is a very significant downgrade in the medevac's capability, to the point where, because of that, there's very little difference at the moment between it and the triage. There's a little bit of difference in terms of weapons layout. There's a little bit of difference in terms of, apparently the medevac is going to have more armor, although until armor's fully implemented, it's going to be hard to figure that out. I guess it just has a slightly bigger health pool. There is also a difference between the medevac and the triage in terms of fuel capacity, which is a bit of a weird one. It doesn't strike me like there should be, but I guess they've got to do something to justify the price difference. So that's where we are at the moment. My issue at the moment is that I don't personally see enough of a difference between the Terrapin medic and the Apollo. Yes, the Apollo can have a tier 1 medbed, but that is it. And actually, when you consider that it takes maybe 10 seconds for you to jump on the medbed, heal yourself, or to heal yourself on the medbed, plus the animation time of getting on and off the bed, that's it. So this huge capacity in terms of medbeds doesn't necessarily equate to a big improvement over the Terrapin medic. The only thing this really has is obviously it has a bed on, or beds on board for 2 crew. It is a very good looking ship. I will give it that. I like these bays and all that sort of stuff. They're very cool looking. You know, it's a nice looking ship. For me, this large lobby area, people are complaining about how big it is and that it's misused space. For me, it was fairly obvious the centre of this compartment was where the drones were supposed to come up. Which then makes a lot of sense in this area, because you're talking about effectively people would be on a drone stretcher, if you will, and then moved around. They've reduced the size of the doors because they don't want drones, or the stretchers would fit through there. But if you're maneuvering them and you've got someone attached to the end of it and you're spinning through 180, this space now makes a lot of sense. So a lot of people saying that this space is too big. I don't think that's the case at all. I think this makes a lot of sense. Robert says both versions had drones. The difference between the two was always just down to more armor and missiles. Yeah, it's if the triage had drones, then I apologise. For me, it was always the medevac. Maybe it was just down to the name then that why I chose it. It's been something that I've looked at for so long, or had in my head for so long. I've kind of almost forgotten the reasons why I wanted it in the first place. But drones are definitely part of that. The Apollo, says Luna Maria, is my most anticipated ship, and I totally anticipated no drones with it. Certainly on launch, I wasn't expecting drones, but I was hoping that they would be one of these, where you've got the medical gameplay so we can bring the ship in, and then drones would be added later. And for me, it kind of makes sense, right? I think the drone is something shaped like that, and a stretcher goes in the middle, and the stretcher has an air shield over it, right? So what the drone does is it comes in, detaches that below that platform in the main lobby. The drone then detaches, grabs another one, and off it goes. And then that stretcher could have been something that basically formed the top of the bed. So you just attach that to the bed, or you drag and move people across and then put that back in like a carousel system, so that the drones can be out, picking up more casualties whilst you are moving ones around interior to the ship. And that's how I kind of, to me, that made sense. It's not how it's panned out. I think the tiers isn't a very good system alone. Like the Idris being tier 2 would be okay if it got a boosted capacity and bump in range, but it's worse than the Terrapins. The Apollo was always supposed to be a mobile medical clinic. The Apollo will shine when we get an Explorer or some other type that isn't medical. Rule of cool, we'll sell it then. Says Charlie McCawsome. Good evening, buddy. Good to see you. Stimpack says, Apollo gives me Star Trek Voyager vibes. And Monster Avy says, same with the Apollo, in my opinion, all that space, but no difference. And I think this is the key thing. So there's two things that I think here. And I kind of talked about it before. Given the fact that we've lost that functionality, I think CIG would endear themselves to the community pretty well if they didn't bump the price when this came out. Right? I don't think, at the moment, you can really justify the price going up that much when they've lost a key part of their functionality. So I think that would be, I know they've given the modules to people, I get that, but they never sold them separately anyway. It would have been really mean to turn around to people and go, hey, you know that medical ship you bought, now you need to buy modules for it? I don't think that was ever not going to be the plan. So that's the first part that I think. The second part, we're probably going to have a bit of a scrap about in chat, and that's okay, because it's all right to disagree. But one of the things that we're going to talk about is the Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 medbeds. Specifically, for those that don't know, the fact that the Idris medbed has been downgraded to Tier 2. So the Idris is now a Tier 2 medbed, not a Tier 1. So the empty space was supposed to be a reception area. Yeah, it just makes sense, right? If you've got people on stretchers, that space, it makes sense for it to be large, because then you can turn around, you can see where you're pushing. There's more room to move stuff around. Never had a problem with a large space. That made a lot of sense. I chose the triage because of the red, said socially. Red ones go faster, obviously. Stuart H. The lack of drones raises a lot of questions around medical gameplay for the Apollo. They're supposed to keep a safe distance while retrieving casualties. I'm not confident flying it into a hot zone. Yeah, so the medevac obviously was supposed to be a little bit more on that front because of the increased armor, because of the increased weapon payload. So the medevac was supposed to be a little bit more on that front, but yes, there are issues with it now potentially, because now, of course, it needs to stop to recover stuff, and stopping in a combat zone is never a good idea. Does the Terrapin have a tier 2 or tier 3? Says Dark Tidings. It's tier 2 on the Metapin. So I think Robert answered that a little later on, but yes, it's tier 2. The interior Apollo is really making me hyped for the interior of the Perseus events of the Galaxy. It looks so good. The interior is very, very tasty. I really like it. They've worked very hard off of the Zeus stylings, and it you can tell it's from the same family, but I think it looks quite nicely different. What Jojo's showing you here is that bit kind of flicks out when you put the landing gear out. Those black kind of wings or antennae kind of flick out when it's ready to go. So the Apollo is a full-on medical clinic, best suited for group play. The Turtle is basic in ambulance, better suited for solo or duo. And this is the point that I'm making about for me, with a Terrapin medic. At the moment, even with a group of like 5 or 6 of us, you can put 5 or 6 people in a medic, or in a Terrapin medic. They fit. It's not comfortable. People get thrown around a bit, but they do fit. And the actual benefit, I don't think that, like I said, the benefit of those beds justifies the size increase, the price increase, over the Terrapin medic. I don't think it's there. Now, on the gameplay front, what I can see making this absolutely more justified is the way we interact with NPCs. So when you go to a planet and you're doing that mobile clinic mission, and you go down to a planet and you're interacting with NPCs, of course it doesn't matter how involved it is treating an NPC, because the NPC is not getting bored and thinking about playing something else. The NPC will just deal with it. So I think there's definitely that aspect. If you're talking a 5-10 minute treatment time per patient on people, that's going to knock a lot of people off. Okay, that might be something you need to do for like when cybernetics come in way down the line. But right now, just to heal a bunch of tier 2 or tier 1 injuries, it can't take that long really, because people are going to get bored with it, and it will just get changed, because they'll be all over Spectrum whinging their little heads off, and that'll be the end of that. What isn't clear is what you do with healed patients. Oh, just boot them out the back, as obviously, just give them a shove, they'll be fine. If you like them, give them the helmet back. If not, just give them a shove, and that's that. The way I see the medical ships as follows: 1 ambulance here in Catalu Red. Yeah, sorry, Robert, I'll come back to that once you finish your thought, my friend. I would like a medical terminal like in the stations, where someone can check into a bed and get healed. Add some costs to each tier of healing. Potentially, yeah. And I think maybe that will come later on down the line, that people have the ability to charge those that aren't in a party or in an org. Maybe that will happen. We'll see. What is quite nice here, there are a lot of other things. There's a medical refrigerator there. Maybe that means that things have to be stored cool. Although, of course, it's not on the other medical ships at the moment. There's patient storage. Interestingly, despite the actual space for the storage not changing, you only get enough storage for each bed, which is interesting, because it's almost like they just went, oh, we won't put enough units in, which is interesting. You get more storage with tier 3s than you will with a tier 1, despite the fact that space isn't used for anything else. You just lose that space to nothing. Which is a bit of an interesting choice. Sorry, crikey, I've missed a lot, so I'm way back up. For some reason, my thing stopped scrolling. The Apollo is my Intrepid class Voyager. The combat evac is the Terrapin medic, says Robert, and then your hospitals Apollo, Endeavour, and the RSA Galaxy with the medical module. Do we think Connies will be side upgraded using the Apollo model? There's certainly going to have to be some form of upgrade to the Connie, regardless. The Connie's just in a bad place. Full stop, the end. So yeah, they're going to have to do something, no doubt. So yeah, it just should have 2 tier 2 beds and 4 tier 3. Polaris should have 1 tier 2 and 2 tier 3, says Asa. So it just bed downloaded that sucks as stim pack. I saw Medivacs as mobile mass unit and triage as medical clinic in a third world country. Stunner says, I understand folks may be getting upset about a ship's medbed downgrade, however this is still all testing and perhaps in the future it will lend more to different than just tier 1, 2, 3. Very potentially. Look, I'm going to go out and I'm just going to say this, right? For me, the big ships of the line should not have a tier 1 medbed. And the reason being is just that simple inclusion of a tier 1 invalidates medical support ships. As I've said before, how quick it is to heal an individual completely invalidates, like, what is the point precisely of the Endeavour Hope, for example, the hospital module on the Endeavour, or the Endeavour class of hospital ship, if, you know, you've got a tier 1 on Javelin, Idris, Polaris. It doesn't make a lot of sense for there to be any sort of medical support ship. It also doesn't make sense from a realism point of view. I served on Illustrious as the last ship that I was on. She has a big medical facility on board, including an operating theatre. However, it's the main reason that they're there for that is the pilots. And obviously they act as a flagship, so they'll have other people come across. But dealing with patients on a warship is not a sustainable option, because not only does it take an awful lot of people to conduct surgery, it also takes an awful lot of other people to conduct the aftercare. And people who've been through surgery obviously require a lot of monitoring, they require a lot of space. You can't just put them in a standard naval bunk, which is why the military still operate hospital ships and medical support ships. Because that's where you want to put the casualties, because wartime is very, very different to peacetime, right? Wartime, it's savage. I don't want a casualty on my ship because they're taking the space of someone that could do the job. And I know that sounds really savage, but that's what it is, right? If I've got someone who's on board and bedridden, I can't put anyone else in that bed, meaning that I've lost one of my ship's company. Even though that person is still alive, I now have lost the ability to have one more person on board to be able to do what they need to do, right? So casualties on board big ships are not a good idea unless it's a medical support ship or a hospital ship, and that's why they transfer people off. So from a realism point of view, even the real world doesn't do it, right? And I get it. People will be like, well, why can't I have it? Well, because then it invalidates the whole medical support ship, and clearly that's not what CIG are going for. And I'm sure we'll pick up that fight in just a second. In the meantime, I'm going to catch up with some of your comments. So, Can says, the Connie flies like a large ship. The Apollo was originally the same ship size and flight models of Freelancer Cuddy 1. Yeah, it definitely got bigger on that front. Charlie McCawsome says, for the size increase, they may have been able to justify for the price and the loss of the drone by giving players a NASA bay. With the size, I can't see how they couldn't have done that. She's a big old ship. What they have said is they're keeping the space for the drones in case they decide that they can add medical drones later. So they're not robbing them of drones. If medical drones come back in, there's all sorts of issues with going, hey, I know we said we were going to add it to these ships, but we've decided not to. But we've added it to other ships, just not the one that we sold you in the first place. That's different to saying there have been design changes through the game. Saying that you're no longer having medical drones is one thing. Selling one ship with medical drones to remove them and sell them on another ship is something else entirely. So that's why they've kept the space. There's a liability thing there. It's slightly different to a design direction. That's a choice not to include something with something you've already taken money for, and that's not the same thing. So yeah, the airlock for the Apollo front elevator really show how detailed the Connie design is with its awkward double door scenario. Yeah, so for those that didn't see it, there's a glass-like shield that comes down on the Apollo as you step into that two-person elevator. The glass shield comes down and the elevator drops through the bottom before the hatch seals to stop the cockpit from losing pressure, which is a really nice touch. It looks really good. It was quite a surprise when I first saw it. I was impressed with it. In the future, life support capabilities to stunner of ships will also matter quite a bit. Apollo, much better, larger life support than, say, the Terrapin for multiple players, etc. Yes, absolutely. I think my issue again with the Apollo is that I don't need the Terrapin to support people much at all, because it's not going to be a huge range. You're in suits when you're on board if you're going to go fighting and stuff, so you're sealed. There's oxypens, which means even if there isn't oxygen in the space, you can keep yourself topped up. And then once you're down and fighting, as people get injured, they can come back to the terrapin, and they will be able to top up their oxygen because there'll only be one person on board at that time. So again, it's, you know, whilst we have these blanket statements, I think specifically regarding the terrapin medic, it doesn't necessarily apply. So yeah. Luna says, Terrapin is the equivalent of modern medical helicopter that can evac an injured soldier by lifting a stretcher on a line, etc. How do you complete Pirate Swarm in 2025? Dave, give it as your best go. Go and watch some of the channels about flying and all that sort of combat flying stuff. I'm not up with that at the moment. I get my backside handed to me in fighters a lot at the minute, so I'm probably not the best person to ask that, but I'm sure there'll be people in chat who can help you out. So yeah. Avi says, whilst I do agree they shouldn't have tier 1 med beds, I don't get why they have the same bed as ships much smaller. They should have a range and capability buff versus the regular. Call the ones on them a tier 1.5. Very, very possibly. But again, why does the Idris need the larger range? Right? Because it's supposed to support people on board. Wouldn't it just be limited to them? And then obviously if you get people down on a planet, that's the job of your embedded MPUV personnel or whatever support ships you've got within the ship itself to go rescue them, bring them back. Again, that's fleshing out the medical support loop. Not doing that is effectively reducing the scope of the medical gameplay, and I feel like the Idris has got so many other loops that it can get involved in with no issue at all. It's probably necessarily and unnecessarily limiting. Apollo grew because she was an old concept before they nailed down the internal metrics. Yeah, that's certainly going to be a part of it. I plan on stealing as much medical equipment for hospitals to decorate my Apollo, says Socially. I can't do much to I can't condone, but I'm not surprised at all, Socially. Gamers are kleptomaniacs at heart. So yeah. So we can also take Cutty Red beds, so better life support. Cutty Red for beds, so better life support. I mean, yeah. I think the Terrapin sits in a Terrapin medic. The Terra medic is it the Medipin they call it now? The Medipin sits in a nice little place because it's got a fair balance of medical capability versus the idea of being small, not having not being massively over engineered for what it is, the cost thing, that sort of stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. I hadn't considered the legal aspects of an ARSA. Makes sense. Lawyers ruin anything. Anyway, got to be off. Here's hoping an upcoming shows on the Paladin. Continue the party. Charlie, good to see you, my friend. Take it easy, and we'll see you next time. Recipidian says the Terrapin has a jump seat, right? So it's 3. So yeah, it is kind of 3. It's also as many people as you can fit on the ground, right? There's one that you can fit in the component space behind the pilot. They can lie down, and you can fit at least 2 lying on the ground, in the cabin. But as far as life support goes, yes, you're right. Probably 3 max. More likely 2, and then you'll have a slow degradation of the atmosphere. But that's to allow, as people said, the idea of evacing casualties to different places. So yeah, the Apollo is too bare, says Sushi. I think it makes sense, right? Medical spaces are supposed to be kind of austere and sterile and all that sort of environments. That makes a lot of sense. It's also, I don't think, too dissimilar from the Apollo. From the Apollo. We're talking about the Apollo. From the Zeus, right? The Zeus is quite a nice internal space. It's not ostentatious or anything like that, but it's a nice place. I really like the cockpit on the Medipin. Sorry, on the Apollo. Good Lord, I'm all over with my words at the minute. Forgive me. I'm gonna try and wash my mouth out with some Diet Coke because good Lord. Yeah, I mean, I don't know of anything that does have a chair for the doctor in the med base. The Carrick's got an office, but that's an office, right? It's not for treating, for treating people. So yes, an interesting, as they say, um, kind of concept, and I think that's the interesting direction that we're having at the moment with medical. Is medical's going through a transition period at the moment from the very basic implementation that we've had, where all they've done is they've played around with who gets what tier beds and the ranges attached to those beds. Now we're looking at a lot more variables. We're looking at what's the cost per respawn, what's the cost per heal, what are the capacity of beds. The idea now that we are going to be able to damage med beds and destroy med beds by, I assume, running on, and then they're going to be need repairing, and maybe you can repair it up, but maybe tier 1 fully repaired by hand only becomes a tier 2, can't do the top end stuff, just like they said that you can repair components on board, but they won't operate at full capacity. How does that translate to a medbed? We don't know. That's one possibility. Maybe you can't put as much stuff. Maybe they can't do respawns, right? There's lots and lots of different permutations that they can have of medical gameplay. The one bit that I have, which is really, or the one exposition that I have, which is I'm sure is going to piss a lot of people off, is I don't think anything other than dedicated medical ships should respawn. So I think unless you are on the Galaxy with its dedicated medical module, or the Apollos, or the Endeavour, or something like that, I don't think you should be able to respawn on those ships. You take something like the Javelin, right? If you're allowing your crew to respawn on that and they have multiple respawns, right, you're not now fighting 65 people, you're fighting 65 people who are constantly respawning. That's something else entirely. So yeah, and you can take that from any, Polaris, Idris, you can apply those to those things. And I know that's going to upset some people, but I said what I said. So there. So yes. Only for the time being, we have free respawn at the space stations and planet side. Yeah, and I like this idea of being able to choose different places to respawn, having seen someone basically get respawn locked onto an Idris where other people were on it and killing him every time he respawned. What does that person do? Because they weren't going to destroy the ship. He couldn't destroy the ship from the medbed, and every time he respawned, he got shot. They basically removed his ability to play the game for a couple of hours, which was pretty poor. So yes, not great. Badgers is so bad at reading chat he won't see this statement. Well, I'm going to stop reading there, Chavez. So there you go. That'll learn you. You don't debate me, my friend. Wub wub. Um, Luna Maria says, as a real life medical professional, I fully appreciate the Apollo's use of space. I also love the 2 crew bunks and entrance into the cockpit to keep flight crew from contact with patients. I definitely got that. I think for a moment it took me back, right? As I walked from the kind of medical space, the medical lobby, through the components into the cockpit, what I was expecting was it to open up into a separate crew compartment. And I was like, wait a second, that's not what we've got. And then, of course, it's all in the cockpit. And that's the thing that struck me as well was, this keeps the separation between us and them. And that way, then, having these auto docks and things like that, the med beds, you can effectively have people coming in. And if you lock that door between you and the rest, if you've got contagious people on board, I'm sure the ship will have some sort of like decontam flush, or you just open it to the void, and the void will kill whatever's in there, and instant decontam, right? So yeah, very very interesting thing. Yeah, so I know the respawn timers are coming. I think the timers should be linked to the bed, not the person, and avoid the zags. Very possibly, yeah. That sort of thing would make sense, or a gap between respawns. So you respawn and then you can't respawn anywhere for another, I guess, 10 minutes, something like that. Because what that would stop is that would completely annoy the fast travel abuse, right? if you put a 10-minute respawn timer in, let's say you respawn at one of the major landing zones, by the time you've gone to your hangar, you've cooled up your ship, you've geared up again, you've left atmosphere, and you've quantumed into you've quantumed into orbit. That's almost 10 minutes right there. So unless you're fighting right above the major landing zone, I don't see 10 minutes as being prohibitive, other than the fast travel abusers, and like, who cares about them, honestly. Hey Notorious, welcome in, mate. Good to see you. So yeah, do you think the drones are needed to transport patients from the Apollo to the hospital? Said Rusty. I know that was aimed at Luna Maria, but I give her a chance to answer that. Walking with a tier 1 is a bit rough, right? Yes, it is. At one point, tier 1 was supposed to be only respawn points at the time. It was going to be limited to the Endeavour, Apollo, and hospitals. It then changed to allow tier 2 beds to respawn when the Cutlass Red respawned. Released. It didn't respawn. The Cutlass Red didn't respawn. It released. Then the Nurser changeable beds could respawn. I mean, they're gonna keep playing, right? It's that the idea that they have to come up with some sort of concept and then they're now locked into this concept is just a daft idea, right? It's literally making a rod for their own backs. What they want to be able to do is play around with it and have a go. And right now it doesn't matter, because Death of a Spaceman isn't even in, let alone affecting anyone. So they can muck around with it as much as they want, right? And also, obviously, at the moment, they've got to keep it geared towards not being prohibitive to us, because there's no reason for it to be being prohibitive, because there's no drawback to respawning now, other than losing what's in your inventory. So what's in your backpack, in your core armor, in your leg armor. You don't even lose what's on your chest, in terms of mags and grenades, armor, guns. At the moment, it just doesn't need to be that prohibitive. There's no reason for it. It needs to be brought in when they're making that way. If CIG would do that, people will rage. What was this? Sorry, the respawning only on dedicated medical ships. Because they'll use the bugs as a reason not to do it. Same with the reclaim timers. So, I mean, it makes sense, right? Because, like I said, for the aforementioned reason of, if you can respawn on capital ships, on combat ships, it becomes incredibly hard. I mean, even like the Polaris, right? You imagine you fought your way into the hangar and you're advancing carefully. Anyone you kill is just going to reappear in the med bay, and at the moment they'll have their armor, their gun, their ammo with them. So all they've got to do is get off the bed, and they're straight back in the fight. It doesn't make sense. And I get later on that might change, and that might change my opinion of it, but I still don't think combat ships. I don't. If you're able to kill some of the crew on an Idris or a Polaris, especially from outside, like through penetration and stuff, that should be a benefit to you, and that should be a signal to the big ship to start thinking about disengaging. You might be very healthy, but you've taken a couple of crew injuries, someone's got a tier 1 head, so now you can't heal that, and they're really ineffective at shooting stuff, they can't really hear things in game, they're struggling to see and follow the pips and all that sort of stuff. That should be an indication for those ships to withdraw. Combat with big ships shouldn't just be about fight till you die. There needs to be that switch where you go, actually, my priorities change. My priority has been fight. Now what I need to do is survive, right? Or to move, to escape this scenario, get repairs and return, live to fight another day sort of thing. So yeah. Make a tier 4 med bed that you can't respawn in, like the Nurser and the CR, and cheaper gel to heal. I mean, because the problem is where do you draw the line, right? Because people with tier 1 beds or tier 2 beds are going to want it to be tier 2. People with tier 3 beds will claim that it completely invalidates their vessel, right? I think that the difference there is between dedicated medical ships and not. And maybe that becomes its own thing. Maybe it's more like some sort of test tube, clone thing-esque rather than regen. Because, it was always supposed to be regen. But it doesn't look like it's quite playing out that way anymore. It looks now it's more about clones and stuff. On a serious note, says Blaze, do you think that 4 size 2 shields is adequate after the size change, considering the Zeus ES has the same. I don't know. I mean, I think if you're taking those ships into combat, you're probably doing it wrong. I think where these ships have a really strong use case, like I said, is the aftermath of a fleet battle. And there might be a couple of damaged or, enemy fighters within all the wreckage and stuff trying to evade capture. And trying to, or maybe, kind of act like, and pick off medical support ships and stuff. I think purely the size of the Apollo is going to prevent that. Because in that scenario, hopefully you'd have allied, fighters in the area. So if you do get attacked, you call them in. I don't think, the Apollo isn't the sort of thing I would be taking in a straight up fight. So as long as the shields give it enough time to call for help and start running towards friendly forces, then I think it works. It's just me. Says, I like the way it's going, but it would be nicer after Star Citizen 1.0 for them to have a hardcore verse, you die remake character. That's going to be awful, especially when you get killed by an elevator. Yeah, that hardcore mode isn't for me. I think Death of a Spaceman is going to make things hardcore enough. It's one of the few times where progress that you may have achieved weeks, if not months, if not years in advance of your death can be removed by that death. It's not like it's Tarkov, right, where you're like, oh my god, I found a graphics card, and you get killed in that round, and then you're done for, right? That's not what we're talking about. Rep and stuff that you earned years ago could be removed and knocked down past a threshold because you died. And that's effectively progression is what we're talking about. So the game will take progression away from you that you'll then have to re-earn. And I think that's, for a lot of people, that's probably hardcore enough. Right? So yeah. You still have a limited resource due to the goo you need. Yes, possibly, although, we've seen these spaces dragging a 1 SCU container in. Filling it full of med goo isn't hard. I mean, if you look at the inside of the Apollo, there are shelves at both ends of the med bay, and it says med gel container goes here. So you can load that up with med gel as well. So there are dedicated spaces on that ship where you put med gel containers not into the med beds. They're there ready so you can grab it. So you literally run out of stuff on a tier 2, and the distance is about 5 meters from the med bed port to the wall with the med gel containers and back again. If you want to take the time and load that up, it'll be expensive, but you can do that absolutely. Is a hover medbed a good option as a form of firefighter? I helped a lot of people that needed transport horizontal. Stretches. That's what we're talking about, right? The trolleys, the gurneys that are already in the game, they just become a little bit more reliable, I guess. Move people around on that sort of stuff. The idea of the hover cart that will be the first of the building things, the building tractor that's basically opens up and it releases 2 drones. At the moment, that looks like it's based on hover technology. So having that as like a suspended hover bed, I think that works, because that from a physics point of view. If there are medical drones, that explains how that works. The drone connects the bed. It goes to pick someone up. It pops them on it when it approaches them. It seals them in, it gives them an atmosphere, so now they can breathe. It comes back on, when it goes into the bed, that detaches, that person's brought up, the next trolley comes down, or the next, platform comes down, stretcher, is attached to the drone goes off again, and so on and so forth. And you just repeat that. And when that comes up, someone grabs hold of it, moves it over to the med bed, transfers the patient, moves the trolley back. Done. And then all those kind of mobility issues and stuff solved by that purpose. I think that works quite nicely. Stuart says, I'd like to see 10 minutes of stumbling around after a respawn, maybe less with higher tier med beds. I think people say that until you're forced to do 10 minutes of stumbling around, and then you immediately get killed, and then you've got to do another 10 minutes of stumbling around. I get what you're saying. I think that's probably a little bit too far over the realism side. This is not fun. Trust me, I've just played Grand Theft Auto where I've delivered a truck full of stuff, and the dude that I'm driving with is smoking away, and I can't control that. This is Grand Theft Auto. It's so basic, and it's just incredibly frustrating. That stumbling around, so it's stumbling around in a vehicle, but it just makes that mission like one of the least enjoyable in that entire game. The biggest complaints are coming from those that just want their infinite respawn point for bunker running, which is not what medical gameplay is, or not what medbeds are for. Exactly that, and this is the thing about Star Citizen, is that infinite respawn stuff. If people want that, there are games out there that will do that. Star Citizen is not going to be that game. Galaxy would be great. You can have all that plus the option to bring or collect the people to and from the battle again. I mean, and this is where the Medivac was going to show off on that front, right? And because the Medivac's dedicated, the Medivac should be better at that than the Galaxy, right? Although the Galaxy will be dedicated whilst it's got that module in, the fact you can swap the modules out should give the Apollo an edge on the medical front. So, yeah. I want to start medical missions socially, but I'm hesitant to restart because I was getting ambushed before. I think it'll be worse because the most expensive in-time item in-game is now the goo. Very possibly. I mean, there's lots of components that are more expensive than that, right? But you make a point. I mean, I've seen people splurge some horrific levels of cash on cargo runs. So there's more out there, but yes, in terms of effort versus reward, it's gonna be up there, right? It's gonna be a little bit rough. Galaxy is starting to seem OP, and I think this is it, right? Is that multi-role ships should be less effective at that role than a ship that is able to do one role at a time but can do multiple roles. Should be less effective than the dedicated. So the most effective, medical ship in the game should be somewhere between the Apollo and the Endeavour Hope. Endeavour Hope for scale, but because the Endeavour can do other things, the Apollo should still be, as the largest medical ship, dedicated medical ship in the game at the moment. The only thing it does is medicing. That's what it should be. It should be the best at it, quite frankly. Yes, you might get more scale on the Endeavour Hope. There might be more functionality to it in terms of, having more people move through, that sort of stuff. But yeah, the Apollo should be. If you're following this logically, the Apollo should be better. Sloth says, looting medical ships is going to be like looting torps from the Polaris. Going to be very lucrative for pirates. Yeah, and I think there's definitely an argument to... what John Chavez was saying earlier. He talked about the legalities of medical ships, right? The key thing there is that potentially ships that are engaged in medical gameplay, there might be an increased crime stat for that, right? Because then, Jared's already said it, right? The point about people who play the medical gameplay, who play the first responder gameplay, is they're there to make other people's gameplay loops better. They're there to rescue them and all that sort of stuff. Apart from the odd weird ones who will use it as an excuse to go down and loot people. But they'll very quickly be stopped because of the rep system once that's in. So yeah, I stopped rescuing because of the ambushes. It was 50-50 when I did it. Yeah, it's a shame, but I think they're gonna move away from that with the, how reliable is the person that's doing the rescue beacon, and then as in set the rescue beacon, and then later on it will be how reliable is the person who is doing the rescuing, because there's an argument to that as well, right? You go to something like, I don't know, Hathor, yeah, and they're in the mining area, you go to rescue them, you go down there and you're like, well, you've got loads of stuff on you, so I'm going to rescue you, but first I'm going to loot you and take all your stuff. Right? So yeah, it's going to have to work both ways. Apollo has the smallest crew requirement for hospital ship, yeah. Because at the moment there's no player involvement in healing. The player is completely able to do it themselves. On medbeds, right? Unless they're downed, but a med pen will fix that. You don't need or a medical device will fix that, be it the multi-tool or the paramed one. It doesn't need to have anything to do with a med bed per se. I view the Galaxy Endeavour as a fleet ship. The Apollo has flexibility. Yeah, I think the Apollo, from what I've seen, the triage and the medevac are going to be able to service and support fairly decent sized fleets for exactly that reason. If you're around things like the Perseus and the Polaris, the Polaris and the Idris, they've got tier 2. You're only really getting called for tier 1 stuff, right? Because again, no medicine in a gunfight. You are not going to be transferring casualties in the middle of a fleet engagement, so the casualties are going to have to wait till afterwards. So the tier 2s will be fixed. The tier 1s are just going to have to wait. They are just, they're going to have to go do firefighting or something like that on board. Run around with a multi-tool and do some repairing, and just be told where to go and what to do. It's lucrative for pilots if the medical ship with all that medgel as proper security. If it's undefended with a solo pilot, then you're giving it away for free. True. Have you seen the new medical rooms added to the old bunkers? I haven't. No. I haven't been in the old bunkers for a while. I've been running a lot of the ASD stuff. I've also been running a lot of the Stormbreaker stuff, which is quite good fun. The maintenance keycards, I've discovered where they are. You don't need to go into the main data center building on Pyro 4 to get them. You can solo in and out with silenced weapons. So I've been doing that a lot and picked up a lot of ASD keycards. Beggar's Outpost. Good evening, buddy. Welcome in. Don't know about medical, but it's going to be a great explorer. I think the limiting factor for the Apollo being an explorer is the cargo space. You might be able to. That might be one thing that you use the large lobby for. Is okay. It won't be attached to a cargo grid, but it doesn't need to anymore. During resource drive, where the Connie in the cargo bay, instead of a flat roof, it kind of does that, right? With the missile bays that run the length of the cargo on either side. If you get the 4 SCU cargo boxes and lay them flat in the middle, when it goes up, they sit perfectly between those two cargo things. So you can actually lay like this extra level. I did that all the way through the cargo drive because I was using the Taurus. So I couldn't fit in a large thing unless I did that. I had to put 4 or 5 on the top. I did that a lot because I got Hurston to tier 5, everything else to tier 4. Every single large cargo I hauled, I did that, and I didn't lose a single size 4 SU container. Not a single one was lost. So that, it clips through the ship, and when you quantum it disappears. It's not doing that anymore. So it's going to be far more reliable, I think, in those spaces to do that. And then if you get one of the the tier 1 med beds, that's going to be more space in there. As long as you can get like a 1 SCU through that door, you can stack more stuff in there as well. And I think it will reliably hold it. So, yeah. So, tier 3 and tier 2 beds can stabilize tier 1 injuries. They can, yeah. So they can treat the, they can basically do the same as the Paramed device. When you switch it to advanced and you treat those injuries. So you'll see over the tier, whatever, you've got your little diagram. It's got the arrow off that gives you the number of the tier injury. When you treat with a Paramed in advanced mode, it treats the symptoms for a set amount of time, and what happens is there's a green background to that number. That's what the med beds will be able to do now. So if you've got tier 2 injuries, but you've got a tier 3 med bed, the tier 2 injuries will be stabilized, not resolved, not healed. So it's a nice way. It answers the question, why would you take, for example, a CAR as an ambulance for the Galaxy? If it can't do anything to the injuries, it doesn't matter. You can take a normal C8, put more people in it because there's more space to cram people in, and then just take them back. The ambulance idea doesn't make sense. Now it does because you can stabilize people, and that's a really nice touch. That's kind of a cool idea. Apollo is my new daily driver. Absolutely not. The only thing I think about the flying it is it feels quite heavy, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because a lot of the ships in this game feel far too light for what they are. But yes, I mean, like the Terrapin, it throws itself around like nobody's business. The Terrapin's supposed to be this heavy armored turtle, right? And yet it's just, and it does whatever it wants. So I don't see it as a problem. It's noticeable when you fly the Apollo. I don't know if you've had the same experience, but it definitely feels different when it comes to that sort of stuff. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to switch us across very quickly. I'm going to put another video in the background. This one from Board Gamer. So go show him some love if you haven't already. If, you know, kind of the Star Citizen news is your thing. I'm going to put that in the background. Just so it's not just me. You're not just staring at me for no reason, because that would be boring, right? So let's have a look, because this is another 12 minutes. So let's jump across, so we can be watching that in the background, because it makes it more interesting, right? It takes a little bit of the weight off your eyes. So there's that. I hope they make more variants using the Apollo body. One already in the works. It was confirmed in August's PU report. There is an Apollo variant, an unannounced Apollo variant coming. So yes, wish granted. Ta-da! You're welcome. I want it to stay exclusively medical, just so us medical players can have something cool to ourselves. It is a very, very pretty ship, as the video is showing, right? It's a very impressive bit of kit. I want a science version. Funnily enough, that's what I said when this came out, is they said, you know, what if it's a gunship variant? What if it's a cargo variant? Because both of those professions feel very much full at the moment in terms of ships, right? Combat and all that sort of stuff. We're doing well. It's certainly this size of ship, right? It effectively just invalidates the Connie. But yes, that was the first thing that I said when we were talking about this in Discord, is that it strikes me very much as potentially science. However, I don't think it will be science, and here's why. And that is because they said they're not going to sell many concept ships, and it's obviously not going to go straight to flyable or be in development now, because science gameplay is miles off. So it's not going to be taking account of any of that. Maybe it's going to be large salvage. Possibly. Don't know. Beggars, I see where you're going with that. Is the white one supposed to be a variant of some in-game TV show? No. So what happened was the Medivac, I think, was either based off the TV show, or the TV show was based off the Medivac, or the Triage. It was one of the two, because it featured in a TV show, yes. So, I can't remember which one it was. I'm struggling to conceive what science gameplay would even consist of. I think it would be things like modifiers for crafting would be one way to do it. So things for refining. So maybe what science does is it generates catalysts for refining. So maybe you can use something and it counts as one quality level above what it actually is. And that, so science generate that as a trade thing. That makes sense to me. You know, same with crafting, that you get a limited use only thing that makes things one quality stage higher than it is, or maybe it extends, so you know your 4 SU of this material becomes 6 SU in effect, because you've got this science thing that makes the materials go slightly further. So stuff like that. Not a crazy advantage, not the you must have this science module on your gun, otherwise your gun's just not going to perform as well, but things that kind of aid and improve and extend the ability and the crafting materials for other stuff. I kind of like that idea. I think that, for me, that makes sense with science. For science! Sorry, Jag Mason. Hello, buddy. Late to the party. Guessing the Apollo variant is either a cargo variant or torpedo bomber. Torpedoes, possibly. Cargo, possibly. Could be a gunship. Although, I mean, I think that would massively clash with the Paladin, wouldn't it? Yeah. I'd be interested to see. I mean, salvage? Question mark? Potentially? I don't know. I don't know. Apollo Phoenix. Yeah, the problem is we've already got a Phoenix, though, haven't we? Connie Phoenix. Yeah, sorry, sir. Robert, I've just read what you said. You said maybe ability to do salvage refining, which we know will be a thing. Maybe it's a refueler. Don't know. Scanning unknowns and mapping might be a science thing. Yeah, I think it's more so the jump point and the mapping is the carrick, which obviously is an exploration function, cartography and stuff like that. But there's certainly going to be things like that because we've got the Hadron Collider and the telescope and stuff that are on the Endeavour. They're modules for the Endeavour, announced, sold, all that sort of stuff. And they will certainly seem to go towards mapping and scanning and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, absolutely. Quick reminder, just because I don't want to use his footage too much without mentioning this. Obviously, the video at the moment, Board Gamer, go check the dude out. Looks good. Hopefully I'm not upsetting them by using their videos in the background. I just thought it'd be more fun than staring at my face, and I think we can all agree on that, right? So, I just want the variant to be a non-combat ship. Agreed, socially. I think that would be nice. Non-combat, but also not cargo. Luna says, if they make a combat Apollo, I'll be very disappointed with CIG. However, I can recall they said they were making a variant of an unreleased ship. I can't recall them renaming or naming the Apollo. So we can go and have a look. I'm just going to and go across. So I'll show you where this was said, just so you guys have kind of have it in your back pocket when other people ask you, and you go, no, I know where this is. And this has always been an important thing for me, is when we talk about this stuff, is that I can say to you guys, not just I found this thing, but also, I found this thing, here's the link so you have it for yourselves, so that people can bookmark it or whatever else they want to do, if that's useful to you. Similarly, if it's not useful to you, that's okay too. Okay. So it might not be a variant. You might be right. You're right. It might not be a variant. Sorry, Luna. You nice challenge. Nice challenge. I think you might be right. Let's have transition and have a look. So here's what they said precisely. Okay, in North America, the RSI Apollo Medivac and Triage continue to be prepared for release, with testing and bug fixing being the focus. Some of the team then moved on to a related but unannounced ship. So it could be another medical, or it could be a hull variant. It could be either, you're right. So it could be another medical ship, although I'm not entirely sure. Given the fact we've got the Cutty Ray, the CAR, the Terrapin Medic, the Endeavour Hope, and both Apollos, I feel like medical is rapidly becoming a full niche, right? There's not a lot of space within there to talk about other ships. So you might be right. It might be another medical ship of another type, but related but unannounced. For me, it more hints, I think, towards a variant, but I could be wrong. So you're right. Thank you for challenging me on that. That's a really good example of reading something, taking an impression of it, and then focusing on the impression as fact rather than what was actually said. So thank you for challenging me, because otherwise I would have kept repeating that, and then I would have looked like even a bigger Wally than here amongst friends. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Space Saga says, I think JC will give us the version we already wanted, to take the weapons off, to give a faster quantum drive, and give us a racing Apollo. Space Saga, you know where the door is. Don't let it hit you in the backside on the way out. I'm only kidding, bud. Avi says, could also be another personnel transport. Swap the size between first class and sardines. A lot of potentials, but I don't know how many make sense. Exactly that. Can says, I'd almost bet money on the variant being some sort of combat. Again, going back to careful, and I know I've just played a big part in this. It may not be a variant. Related but unannounced. So is it related in terms of gameplay, or is it related in terms of hull? I struggle to see where they're going with the gameplay, but then again, I'm not the arbiter of all things Star Citizen, so it might just be that I'm not seeing it. Chances are high that the variant for the Apollo will be cargo or combat. I mean, there's not much left, is it? What have we got? Mining, cargo, combat, refueling. Exploration, I guess you could argue that that's in some very limited capacity. Dropship. Apollo dropship. Yeah, I guess maybe you could do. Maybe. Oh, wouldn't this be cool? Wouldn't it be cool to have a dedicated Atlas unit? So the bays on either side become Atlas maintenance bays and charging bays rather than that. And then what happens is they lower on platforms. So those modules, the base opens and they walk out facing out of the ship. So they just walk out and that'll be cool, right? Dedicated Atlas dropship. Don't know. We'll see. Medical bomber, says Jamlak. Jamlak, get out. Stimpak, good to see you, my friend. Take it easy. All the best, mate, and we'll see you soon, yeah? Don't be a stranger, my friend. Origin Medical? Possibly. Could be a variant like the Asgard. CIG doesn't consider that a variant. Yeah, I mean, it could be. I don't know what you'd fit in the back. You'd obviously have to do, or maybe it just opens. But then again, excuse me, it doesn't. I suppose you could convert the entire end, the back end, into a lift unit that goes down and then opens that way, and stuff can drive out. But at the moment, you don't fit much under there. I think you can fit under there crouched, but that's about it. You don't fit much under that ship. So yeah, no, you're very welcome. Like I said, it's it's more important for me to be accurate on here than it is me being correct. So if I've said something wrong, I'm more than happy to review it, because there's more than enough misinformation flying around in Star Citizen without me adding to it. That doesn't need to happen, right? So yeah, interesting. So they said when the Apollo came out, the medical supplies would need special cargo hauling, and maybe that's what we saw the refrigerator. There was the medical refrigerator thing. Maybe that's got something to do with it. Don't know. So yeah, bomb the enemies to a respawn point. Luxury salvage ship. Med ship should not have any variant that would invite hostility, like combat oriented variants. Citizen, I agree with that. Drake obviously broke that, but that's because Drake are cheap. But yes. What was interesting is Chavez, I'm not sure if you're still here, mate, or whether I annoyed you enough that you left when you were talking about trying to... Here you go. Badgers is so bad at reading chat, he wouldn't see the statement. I saw what you said, and what Chavez says was, the Apollo would be in violation of current law about non-combatants bearing arms. So, hello, mate. Good to see you. So, yes, part right and part wrong. So, if you want to claim the medical protection in a combat zone, you cannot be a combatant. However, it's also perfectly acceptable to have things like combat search and rescue. Black Hawks, armed teams go and extract pilots. They just do not get to claim the same medical exemption as, for example, a Huey painted white with a red cross on the side. They don't get to paint the red cross because they are a combat unit. To claim the protection of the Red Cross. So yes, you're entirely right. Both things are capable of being true, but the minute you put armed, anything, any sort of weaponry, on a medical platform, it ceases to be a medical platform legally. It's now a combatant. So yes. Agree, they shouldn't just have combat ships that share a hull with medical ships, but CIG just loves a combat variant of everything. I've got to say, I agree with what Luna Maria was saying earlier. I don't like the idea of this becoming combat. The silhouette should be very distinctly medical, do not engage. For that. Imagine telling a pirate org you're protected by the Geneva Convention. Well, I mean, here's the thing, right, is that... there are a lot of examples in combat of medics not getting shot, right? Of troops purposely not targeting medics. I mean, there's also a lot of examples of medics being purposely targeted, right? But that's because you knew that sometimes if you were on the losing side or you were captured or whatever and injured, they would be the same people treating you, and it's the respect of warfare, and it's not universal. It doesn't exist in every combat zone, and I'm not saying that it does. But there's something about that I quite like, which is that there are certain people who are just exempt from hostilities because all they're trying to do is help people. And I get it, that's not how the internet works. I understand that 100%. I'm not expecting that to be in the game. But I certainly will not be engaging medics unless they come with a gun out, at which point they're a combatant, right? So yeah, there's that sort of stuff. The variant will be for dropping Atlas medical vehicles, and then they'll fire. Maybe it's a medical Atlas. Would that work? Don't know. Don't see a medical atlas working, but yes, possibly. Um, hey, Citizen Ninja, good to see you. Currently, the Apollo unique medical ship, all other medicals have a non-medical hull. Yeah, so I mean I guess the Galaxy, and I know it's not in yet, so it doesn't kind of relate to what you said. But yes, the Terrapin, you're right, has a reconnaissance version, which is a combatant. Drake Cutty does blue, black, steel. Bleh. It's got a lot of combat variants. You're right. Even the Pisces, the expedition. I guess the Pisces, you could argue that the expedition and the normal Pisces. Yeah, no, the expedition isn't it? Because it's got extra weapon mounts. When you name it a different version, because it's got the ability to mount extra weapons. When it's got missiles hanging off the side. Yeah, so the sick T, says Stuart. Beautiful. That's exactly what it is. If the Atlas gets a medical version, it's a sick T. Full stop. The end. Love it. Well played, mate. Well played. The Atlas sick T. Yeah, even if it's not an Atlas, it's the Atlas sick T. I like that a lot. Um, well played. Well played. So yeah, the pilot gets the turret too, so two size 4 and two size 3, yeah, and the missiles as well, right? Because the Medivac's got missiles. Players will not adhere to the not shoot a medic rule. No, exactly that. But I also think if you're in a pirate org or you're affiliated with the pilot guild and they're being cracked down on pretty heavily, so they can't go and get medical supplies, and it's no simplicity to get medical supplies. I think if you're gonna reach out to a medic and do a deal with them for medgel, you shoot yourself in the foot, both figuratively and literally, if you then double cross them on that deal, because they just won't do it anymore. Neither will any other medic who's heard about it. So now you're really struggling to get access to medgel, and it's that sort of mechanic that I quite like. Is the yeah, all right, it's that sort of stuff. Would Seaways or other direct and counteractive protection systems count as weapons? Yes, they would. Um, so legality wise, I know that Royal Navy um, ships have small arms. So the Royal Naval Hospital ship, Argus, is more of a helicopter training ship now. So she's a helicopter training ship slash um, medical support vessel. Because budget, right? You can't just afford to have a floating hospital when you haven't had a maritime war in 20 years. Um, So small self-protection systems might not. And the only reason I think that is because there are a couple of I think there are RFA with 20 mil, basically kind of platforms on them, and there's no way an RFA is rocking up to something to shoot people. It's too big. Half of them are tankers, but I don't think they are. It's a good question. It's a good question. I think to fulfill the letter of the law, no weapon systems. Um, it might be that again, if they have weapon systems on them, they are accepting that they are in fact a combatant. Um, ERA. So, oh, you mean the is that the radio the one that's used to make uses radio waves or microwaves basically to make people feel very uncomfortable and disperse crowds? That's absolutely a combatant weapon. That is not a medical self defense thing. Oh, explosive reactive armor. No, it's defensive. Has no offensive capability. You need to be attacked for that to work, and it is purely defensive. Armoring something up is fine, right? Giving it the ability to defend itself. So, for example, if you give a medical helicopter chaff to defeat missiles and flares and all that sort of stuff, acceptable. That's fine. No issue at all. But it must be immediately obvious that they are a medical. Visually, it must that they are medical. So yeah. Hence the reason with things like Black Hawks go in with parajumpers who are all armed and, you know, armed to the teeth and very effective at what they do, because they're not. So they will go in and engage. Apollo Data Runner. Data Runner's a nice one. US Navy Hospital. Yes. So the thing there is not so much whether or not they are armed, it's whether or not legally they then still get to claim to be a non-combatant. And I don't think they do. I think they're basically going, in a fleet battle, if you've got aircraft in and around the fleet, for example, they're going to engage every target in there, regardless of whether or not it's firing them. So they get a target of opportunity, they get to line up, they're going to attack it. In that scenario, it's better for a hospital ship to be able to defend itself rather than sink and then whinge about it to the UN afterwards. Again, a lot of these things, like trying to claim a seaweed, makes a ship a combatant. So it's any weapon. So I think it's pretty much any weapon system. Having some sailors on the gangway with a gun stopping people coming on board when you're alongside in harbour is completely different. But yeah, we'll see. We've gone down a hell of a rabbit hole here, haven't we? Holy moly. So yes, bit of a rabbit hole, but that's where we are. USNS Comfort is paint white with red cross. So yeah, it may well be. It's whether or not it gets to claim the legal protection of being a non-combatant. I don't know. So within the Royal Navy, are the helicopter support ships, the tankers, the refuel, the support and logistics arm do not come under the Royal Navy. They're called there's something called the RFA, the Royal Fleet Auxiliary, and they are not military personnel. They are civilian personnel who are flying under a white ensign, red ensign, white ensign. I think when they go to war. So they come with us, and they're within the fleet, and they are trained just like we are to defend themselves against missiles and that in terms of their manoeuvring. You know, we position around them. They're often what we call a HVU or an MEU. So HVU is a high value unit, so something that's very important to the fleet, and an MEU is something called a mission essential unit. So if you're going in, for example, to go and provide medical support to a country that's under attack, your hospital ship is now your MEU. It's your mission essential unit, because without that you can't complete your mission. A HVU would be maybe your ship with, you know, your fuel and your food and whatever else on it. You're going to be in a tough spot if you lose it, but you can always call in another support ship from elsewhere. That's the difference between the two. So yeah, what about putting something like Trophy or Iron Fist on an APC ambulance? Guys, I'm not legal. I'm not a legal. I'm not a combat legal specialist. I have no legal background whatsoever. All I can tell you is that there are specific legal conditions to be able to claim that you are a non-combatant medical in a combat zone. Having offensive capability categorically rules you out of that. It's that simple. Scott Gust, hello buddy. I know why some people are bashing the Apollo. I love it, and I like the direction Medplay is going. Yeah, I don't think anything in here has been kind of extended to bashing the Apollo. I think the question is specific around the triage and the medevac. With the loss of drones, what is the clear benefit other than the tier 1 medbed over something like the Terrapin medic or something like that, right? Because yes, it's got a lot more beds, but when it only takes 10 seconds to heal up, it's not a massive advantage to having a lot of beds, right? So yeah, so that's where we've gone in. Oh, sorry, no, you're right, Scott. Yeah, no, I get that. I just realised the thumbnail might make people think that I'm bashing it, but yes. There are defensive systems that are legal and used on civilian airliners, but CIG will never implement those, so it's not worth talking about. Yeah, I don't feel like I've got any more to add to the CWIS stuff and all that sort of stuff. I think the way you get into legality issues with any sort of self-defense weapon is you're relying on the other side knowing that it's a self-defense weapon, right? Because if they believe themselves to be under threat, that's justified under maritime self-defense. So, preemptive self-defense is a thing on the high seas. If you're not in territorial waters, preemptive self-defense is still a thing. It's literally the Wild West out there. So yes, that obviously I know because that was kind of my job, right? Was that warning shots and stuff like that, you don't breach any laws with them. As long as you follow your own national laws, you don't breach any other one's laws because it doesn't really apply, because it's the Wild West. So there. I don't think it needed to be bigger. No. I think they're a decent size. What I really do like about the Apollos is the proportions that they have. They could have looked very, very strange, and I think they got the proportions just right, which is really nice. So that's good. It's a pretty ship. It's certainly a pretty ship. I was down on it before it was released to PTU. Once I'd seen it in PTU, I was a little bit more on side with it, deciding that I kind of liked it and all that sort of stuff, right? That for me was a lot more like, yeah, that's cool, I like this. But yes, like I said, at the moment, because my CCU chain to the medevac goes through the Vulcan, I'm going to keep it, get to the Vulcan when the Vulcan's released. I'm going to try that. And then if I'm not a fan of the Vulcan, I'll take it up to the medevac, and maybe I'll take it past the medevac to other things. But like I said, I really do hope that the one thing that CIG does, bearing in mind they've taken a major gameplay function away from it, which it was sold with at the time, I hope they have the sense not to up the price when it releases. I hope. I don't think they will. I think they will pump the price up, but I don't think they should. You've taken a major gameplay loop away from them. The way to deal with that is to go, well, we're not going to put the price up. Or put it up nominally $5. So everyone that bought it got a price increase out of it, as we would do, but it's not a kick in the teeth for those that don't have it yet. But I don't think it should go up in price. Yeah. When I saw the sleeping quarters in the cockpit, I thought I hated it, but in function it's brilliant. Now I love it. Exactly that. And I think I quite like the cockpit, and I think Luna said as well that it's her daily driver. She's a massive fan of the cockpit space as well. And I know other people have said that it looks quite good. I mean, at CIG, it's going up at least $15. Yeah, look, it's going to go up, but I don't think it should. I think the medical module thing was a bit of a red herring because they never sold the modules differently. They never said that they were going to sell those modules differently, as far as I'm aware. I could be wrong, but I don't remember them saying that, so yeah. We'll see. Flight deck is pretty sweet. The whole thing is quite good. And like I said, you can see in that large lobby area, there's one of the platforms on the floor in the center actually now says radar, and it says something about continuous cooling required when in use, right? I think that was probably where the casualty beds were going to come up, if they still had drones. So yeah, there's that. So that's where we are. Very quickly, I'm just going to step away from my screen just for a moment, and because no one sees my ass, I'm going to do this, but I just want to canter through very, very quickly the headlines from Thursday Star Citizen Live, and then we'll draw stumps. So give me 2 seconds, I'll go get my list. Let me know if you're old school and you still use notepad and pen rather than everything else, right? But let's have a look. Running through this, then they talked about regression. That they had an inordinately high number of problems that they thought they'd solved reoccurring, and that's part of why they focused on stability. To do that, they created hero squads. And these hero squads targeted specific issues to try and deal with them, right? That when they first did this, they talked about the idea of the Joker card, of saying, right, this problem gets the Joker card and we're all going to focus on that. That's now kind of evolved into this idea of hero squads who go around, focus on an issue and fix it. And one of the things they've been working on is the transit system. Okay, basically what this means now, which we're feeling the effects of, is the QA leads are now driving the priority for bug fixing, not production management, and that seems to be working really well for them, and that's good news. The embedded QAs with each team are now able to say no to changes that are coming that are too broken. So teams have an embedded QA tester who's able to go, no, you can't include this. This is too broken. The community are going to lose their mind. And I think that's why we're seeing things like the mission pickup on location, which has once again been bumped for 4.3.1, has been shunted into yet another patch. That sounds like that's the work of this new system. They have an idea of stability scores. So every build now, not every patch, has a stability score which is based on a range of factors, and it basically allows them to go from optimal, which is the best, to excellent, down through stable, and then it goes all the way down to extremely unstable. So extremely unstable, as they said, was 318. They're aiming for, obviously, normal or stable or higher, but, you know, aiming for things like excellent and optimal. Let's have a look. So, they've said that game session length has massively increased for each player, which is a really good thing. It means that players are playing for longer. So they're not just now logging in, seeing the new change of a ship, logging out, waiting for the next patch. And they've said that that has increased massively. Okay. The tech preview at the moment isn't just about the Vulkan integration. It actually contains a lot of technical changes to the engine backend. And they reckon there's now 8 to 9 months of changes that are being incorporated in this new tech preview. So once that's gone through the pipeline and improved, hopefully we'll see another raft of quality of life, optimization, graphics improvements, things just generally working better. And I think we'd all agree that's great news for all of us. So, Rusty, good to see you, mate. Have a good evening, and we'll see you in a little bit. Yeah. So, it also includes a major scripting change to the mission system, which apparently the mission team have been asking for months now. When does this change? This is going to make our lives easier, so that's kind of cool as well. Once this tech preview is in, they know what the subject of the next tech preview is. Anyone want to have a guess at what the next tech preview is that's coming to the PU? Oh, sorry, it's coming to Tech Preview channel. Anyone see the video? Have a guess. It's a gameplay loop. It's been promised for a little while now. It's going to change multi-crew ships massively. Engineering, exactly, Space. It's engineering is going to be the next tech preview things. Stack. I was going to say something rude, but I'm not going to. So that's good news. They've said that they need more people to go and test. So if you're able to go and test PTU, give it a go. They talked about server meshing and the dynamic server meshing. They're doing a little bit of work on it, but it is not a priority right now. They are more looking at things like instancing and everything else. So DMS, they call it dynamic server, or DSM, sorry, dynamic server meshing. It's taking a little while. And it's not a priority at the moment. So yeah. Sorry, I'm just reading through. I can't read my own handwriting. It's okay, because I write a bunch of notes when I'm watching the video, and then I write a script from this. I didn't get as far as the script. And the reason being is there's so much detail in this that it's hard to do the headline stuff that I've done with previous flash traffic videos, which is why I didn't release one for this, because it's really hard to judge the level of you know, of what's going to be, what people are considered to be, just the important headlines and not the filler. So there's that. Freight elevators, hero squads have been working on that. There have been improvements. There are still things that aren't fixed. They are still working on it. But personally, in both the PU and the PTU, I have seen improvements on freight elevators, which is good news. I think resource drive under the current patch, after they extended it into this patch, were working a lot better, and that's good to see. And hopefully you've experienced the same thing. They're working on medical beacons. They're hoping to bring that in at some point in the near future, maybe with the respawn changes, with the multiple respawn locations, but no promises. There's all sorts of issues with it, but they are working on it. And they are working on something called the transport system, which will replace the transit system, make things a lot better and reduce a lot of that. They're also working on things like ATC and long-term persistence. It seems like the shift to server meshing, the change away from iCache to the replication layer and stuff, a lot of the systems weren't built by that in mind. So they're having, or with that in mind. So they're having to go back, they're having to change a lot of things. Just, you know, I guess it's worth bearing this stuff in mind as we wait for whatever specific change we feel like would make our lives in the verse better. So yeah, cool. I'm going to go to town on engineering when it comes out. Notorious, absolutely. Still worried they're pushing forward with engineering of their armor. It can make a lot of this very very limited point. We'll see. You know, again, we don't know what we don't know, but you know, things are going to come in, and we're not going to get the full value of them until everything else comes in after it. This is just the experience of having a game at this stage of build. I'd much rather see it in rather than not, because the minute we get it in, we can start pushing for more physicalized engineering rather than Beam Citizen. Final note I will leave you with this evening. CitizenCon Direct. As the plan stands, Daily Noob from Twitch will be in the UK and in Shez Badgers, not me, the house, before anyone starts getting rude, will be here at Shez Badgers to watch CitizenCon with us. So I'm going to stream to my stuff. He's going to stream to his stuff, but we're going to sit here together, get drunk, probably play a drinking game around what they do and don't say. There will be some socks on standby for Widget, just in case they do announce Nick's coming at CitizenCon, but I doubt it. So yes, there'll be lots of stuff like that. We'll see. When engineering comes in, Badgers gets to be a Harrison train conductor for a day. Wait, what makes you think I'm not a train conductor anyway? But yeah, just to bear that in mind. So if you're looking for somewhere to come and have some fun, then, you know, Daily Noob and I would love to have you here at CitizenCon Direct. Bring some beer. It should be good fun. We'll probably be a little bit sozzled already by that stage as well. So hopefully I can remember how to string a sentence together by that point. And if I can't, hey, it's just going to be funnier for you guys. Good stuff. Okie dokie. I think we've had so much to cover. Thank you, Luna, for your very, very kind comment about the conversation today. I'm really, really glad you have been enjoying that. But again, really good to see you all. And I'm hoping to get a video out some point this week, depending on work and how crazy it's going to be. You've been watching Drinkers with Gaming Problems. Thank you very much for stopping by. I'll see you soon.